Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, 3 Tips for Women in Leadership Increasing Your Political Acumen. Today's presenter is Allison Horak. For your convenience, the slide deck for today's presentation will be available on the CPS HR Consulting website. Please visit us at cpshr.us to download. This session is also being recorded, and we will post a link to the recording on the same page of our website as soon as it is available. If you have any questions for Allison, please go ahead and enter them in the chat and/or Q&A panels on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will address them as time allows. And now, let's get started.
Thank you. Thanks, Angelique, and thanks everyone for being here. I am going to echo what Angelique said. I'm just going to change it slightly. I have the chat open. I don't have the Q&A open, so can we just exclusively use the chat and then everything's in one place? That would be great. Thank you. All right, so let's jump in and get started. 3 tips for increasing your political acumen. So I wanted to start with defining what this means. What is political acumen, or at least how am I using the term? So oftentimes we hear political or politics and we think kind of, US, Democrat, Republican. That's not what we're talking about, or that's not what I'm talking about. This is how I'm using the term. Political acumen is your ability to navigate the subtle, I guess we could say sometimes not so subtle, but often subtle undercurrents of office politics and interpersonal dynamics to achieve organizational goals. I know that's kind of a mouthful, but for me, a lot of it is like, it's all that unwritten stuff at work that sometimes, if we're new, maybe it seems like, how does everybody else know this but me? Or it's just stuff you pick up on. It's not written down anywhere. It's not in a handbook. You just kind of learn by being at the organization. It may be like people's communication preferences, or, oh, now I realize those 2 people don't really get along very well, or it's just, those are just 2 examples. But how do we navigate that? How can we make the most of our influence at work to get things done? So that's how I'm using it. Okay, so here's our agenda for our 30 minutes this fine Friday. And I'm going to give you the 3 tips right here. We're going to, of course, dig in deeper to all 3 of them. Number 1 is focus on what you can control. That may sound familiar, and maybe it's kind of just common advice, but we're going to dig in and really get practical. Like, what does that mean for us in this world of political acumen? Then we're going to talk about how can we use our relationships at work to influence people. And then our 3rd tip is to find allies and be willing to support, our allies. And we will be talking about this unspoken, again, reciprocity that exists. When we support others, they're more likely to support us. It does require us extending ourselves first in order to get that reciprocation. So those are the 3 tips right there. Done. But we're going to dig in deeper. Okay, so let's first talk about this idea of focusing on what we can control. So many of you are probably familiar with this idea of a circle of control, circle of influence, circle of concern. It is based on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I think is the best-selling business book of all time. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, but this will be a refresher. I know this has helped me, not just in the world of political acumen, but just in the last 14 months of the pandemic. What can I control? What can I maybe influence? And what are things that I'm concerned with, but I really can't exert any control over, and kind of making sure I'm focusing my attention in the right places where I can actually make an impact. So I've got a graphic for you just to illustrate this point. So we're going to start by, so we will be looking at 3 concentric circles. The innermost circle is the circle of control. Stuff that we can control. So I have this list of 4 things. I don't think this is controversial. I hope we can all agree. I can control my, and you can control your behavior, attitude, words, and actions. We are free moral agents. We can decide what kind of behavior, how we're going to behave. We can decide what kind of attitude we're going to have in the face of challenges and in the face of successes. We can choose our words. At each moment, I'm choosing the words that are coming out of my mouth, and I control what I do. Okay, so what's the next circle? Outside of our circle of control is our circle of influence. So these are things that we can't 100% control, but we can have some influence on the outcome, on what happens, because we have a connection with the person or the event. So I can influence, of course, my reputation. I can't 100% control that because, just for example, someone might post something on social media that affects my reputation. That was not within my control, but I can positively influence how I'm perceived by others, right? My reputation. I can influence where I work. Someone else is the ultimate decision maker, for instance, about whether I get hired or not. I control whether I leave or not, but whether I get hired somewhere, that's outside of my control, but I can influence it. Whether I get promoted, that's someone else's decision, but I have a strong role to play. And then what other people think about me. Again, I can't, that's kind of similar to my reputation, but I don't ultimately control how you are thinking about me right now. But I hope that I can influence that by being prepared, being professional, speaking clearly, etc. Okay, and then the outermost circle is our circle of concern. These are things that concern us. For instance, the economy, the weather, natural disasters. If there's a war going on, terrorist threats, basically almost anything in the news, we're probably concerned about. Of course, we could throw the pandemic in there. Worldwide health concerns. Can we control that? I'll speak for myself. No. Can we influence that? Not that much. I mean, you could say, well, if I get maybe if I wear a mask and I follow the guidelines, I can influence, maybe my little corner of the world as far as the pandemic goes or whatever. But basically, that stuff is out of our control and our influence. So those are the 3 circles. So the idea here is for us to have a proactive mindset. And so rather than spending a lot of time in that outside green circle, basically worrying about things that we're concerned with, but we cannot control or influence, a proactive mindset tells us, I'm going to focus my energy on issues that are in that innermost circle, things I can control. So I'm going to show you a different yet similar graphic. The outer 2 rings, I've removed the words and I've made the inner ring much bigger. Now again, that inner ring is our circle of control. So what I'm saying to you about political acumen, being able to navigate these unwritten rules at work, it may sound a little counterintuitive, like, well, it seems like this discussion is about, our interpersonal dynamics at work, and you're saying kind of like focus on yourself. Well, a lot of I can't really control other people. I can influence them, but the more I spend focused on what I can control, one thing is I'm going to feel more in control of my life. I'm not going to be spinning my wheels worrying about things I have no control or influence over. And I'll stop my comment there because I've got a question for you on the next slide. But let's look at, so the first 4 things are the same. So I'm going to pick up from there. I can control my work ethic, my level of enthusiasm, let's say, in the face of change at work, what I volunteer for. what organizations I volunteer for, what I volunteer for at work, what I choose to read, my own professional development, places I travel to. That arguably has nothing directly to do with work. What skills I learn and whom I support. That can be, I'm thinking my mindset when I wrote that was at work. And you know, we're going to be talking about allies in just a moment. So that's kind of, I'm laying some groundwork there. So we're going to keep that same graphic, put it at the top there. And here's the premise I'm throwing out to you. And I want to know your thoughts in the chat, please. So here's the idea I'm floating out. Focusing our energy, if you want to say our time, our attention, our energy, whatever, on that innermost circle, things that are within our control, grows that next circle, grows my ability to influence others, and it shrinks that circle of concern. So I'm throwing that out there to you as I believe that's true. Maybe we can call it a general truth. If you agree with me, kind of help me flesh this out. How does that work? How does focusing on things I can control spread my influence and shrink my need to worry about stuff out of my control? What are your thoughts? I'll give you a moment to type. I know it takes time to think and type, but I'd like to hear from you in the chat, please. So just in case I haven't been clear, I'm going to repeat it. This is my premise. When we focus on stuff we can control, it grows our ability to influence others. Do you agree or disagree? Why or why not? How does this work? Okay, Sharon says we're leading by example. Okay, good. Right. If I'm controlling, I'll just pick my level of enthusiasm in the face of change at work, that is going to probably, without too much effort on our part, we are influencing the people around us. Oh, Allison seems like an early adopter. And she seems to be doing fine. I guess maybe I could get on board too, or whatever. That's just an example. Okay, thanks, Sharon. Anne says, I agree. LaCandice, agree. It demonstrates personal accountability and high emotional intelligence. All right. Laura speaks to time management. That's an interesting kind of facet to this, right? How am I spending my time? Personal satisfaction, overall well-being. That's a very holistic approach. Thank you for that. Danielle, when you're attentive to those things within your immediate control, you're spending less time focusing on those you can't. I love that observation. Like, we all have a finite amount of time, right? We all have 24 hours in a day. So you're going to run out of time to worry about things in your circle of concern if you're spending more time on your circle of influence circle of control. Thank you. Karen, it works because it also grows emotional intelligence and assists in working well with everyone. Right. And I don't think you're interpreting this way, but just in case, I am not saying we all have to go around with permagrins and accepting everything that's thrown at us and with positivity. I don't want to come across as like too Pollyanna, but I think we do have to acknowledge that we can control all of these things and that it does have an effect on our ability to influence other people. Right, good. Ravonda agrees. Sarah, inspiring people, changing the world around us. Yeah, like changing our little corner of the world, that's more within our control, but it can have this ripple effect out. Very good. Gina, I focus my energy on those areas rather than things I can't control. I change my story. I like how you phrase that. By influencing those around me, I can encourage others to follow my energy. Right. And that doesn't even, there's nothing wrong with actually speaking to people about this, but I think sometimes it's just, it rubs off on people, if you want to say by osmosis. Positive people, we tend to gravitate toward more positive people than negative people. And so we want to be one of those people. Okay, good. Let's see, Juliet, it's easy to worry about things outside of our control and then feel helpless. Focusing on what you can control helps give us that power, right? Yeah, it builds momentum and enthusiasm. Great. Michelle jumps in with an agree. Susan, when we have control on things we can have control over, people see our consistency with our work ethic, for instance. Excellent. Yeah, and Sarah, strategic focus on where you can have the most influence. Exactly. In a way, we are talking about time management. I think it's bigger than that, but how are we spending our time? Yeah, okay, excellent comments. Thank you so much for contributing in the chat. That really helps. Okay, so we're going to go to our second part, our second tip. Let me just check my time. Okay, good. Some approaches to influence. So there's a lot of ways to talk about this topic. How I'm looking at it is that there are 3 ways to approach influence. One is with logic and reason, and that's a very viable way. I'm going to try to convince people to see things my way, or accomplish this organizational goal through logic and reason. I can also appeal to people's emotions. That's also on the table. And then a third way is that I'm going to try to influence people through our existing relationship or our social appeal. And that's the one I'm going to focus on for our webinar today. In the larger version of this class, we talk about all 3. For our 30 minutes, I'm just going to focus on this one. So how does this work? How do I influence people through our relationships? Well, this is one way, at least. We can engage other people by asking them questions, not assuming we have the answer to everything. Seeking advice from other people. That is an immediate relationship builder. Hey, can I talk to you about this? I'd like to get your thoughts on this topic. We are influencing people, even though we're asking them for something. And then there's some overlap with these 3, but involving people somehow in the problem or, solution that we're trying to promote at work. So again, that definition of political acumen kind of boils down to our ability to navigate the undercurrents and the relationships at work to accomplish organizational goals. That's what we're trying to do. So here's an example of how this might work, this using relationships to influence through asking questions, seeking advice, involving people in the problem solving. So you could ask existing analysts, I just picked a position, an analyst, ask existing analysts to help you as the manager identify recruitment and onboarding strategies for new analysts. So rather than having the mindset of, I'm the boss, I've been here 10 years, I know how to recruit, look at my team. I've got like 3 really good people already. Like I've got this in the bag. We think about, how can I gain some influence with my team and maybe outside my team even? Here's an opportunity. Rather than just kind of handle it on my own, I am a rock, I am an island. I'm going, before I implement something, I'm going to ask my team for their input. They're in this position and we want to add a 4th person to our hypothetical team here. I'm going to get their ideas. Where should I go? What job fairs, what websites do you think I should post on? What job fairs should I attend? Do you have any suggestions for wording on the job posting? That's what I'm talking about as far as asking them for their ideas, for their strategies. Now, there is a caveat here. There's a limitation to this, which is we have to be sincere. If you do this and you're kind of like, well, I went to that webinar and she said I should involve people. I know what I'm actually going to do, but I'll I'll kind of pretend and ask them for their input, and but then I already know I'm going down this path. People are going to realize that almost immediately, that you're just kind of being manipulative, right? So that's not what I'm advocating for. People catch on if it's not a sincere attempt to pick their brains or involve them. So we really want to make sure that if we ask people for input, we really intend to listen. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to use everything that they give us, but it does have to be sincere. We want to learn from them. They are boots on the ground, to use a military term, right? These are the people who are doing the job. This is an excellent resource. We need to use them. And okay, so let me ask you, like, why do you think, or how does this strategy work? If you agree that this is a way to influence people, so for instance, this is a way to get the existing team to be much more accepting of the new person you're about to hire, is let them have a say in how that person gets hired. That's what we're talking about. So if you agree that this works, kind of flesh this out a little bit for me again in the chat, please. How does this work? How does asking questions of another person or group, seeking advice, involving them in the problem or solution, kind of connect the dots for me? How does that actually help influence them in a positive way? Karen, yeah, it makes them feel like part of the team and part of the decisions, the things that are affecting their lives, right? In my hypothetical, they're going to have to work with this person every day. It empowers them. It makes them feel valued. That's a great answer, just like a nutshell answer. That's right. When you ask someone for advice, it means you value their opinion. Yeah, and you're going to listen. Exactly. Sarah, they become invested in the outcome. Excellent observation. Right. Tina, it demonstrates you value their input, view them as knowledgeable. Right. Exactly. Juliet gives them ownership and increases their commitment to whatever it is that you're kind of floating out there. Absolutely. And Laura increases enthusiasm. And I love this twist, mentorship. Yeah, great. Mentorship opportunities. Awesome. Okay, excellent. Thank you all. So when someone provides input or collaborates, this really just enforces what you all said in the chat. They feel more involved and committed to ensuring success. Building those alliances with your team, in my hypothetical, provides a strong source of influence. And so in our last 7 minutes, we're going to focus on this idea of alliances. So that takes us to our third tip: find and support your allies. So I have a question for you. I'll give me just a second. I'll lay a little groundwork, but this is what we're going to be talking about. Where do you find allies at work? I think some obvious ones would be your manager, hopefully, right? And the people on your team. I hope that you're getting support from below and above. But I think we have to think more laterally about allies. And I don't just mean like other supervisors that are on your same level. I just mean like let's think more broadly about where we might be able to find allies at work. There are a lot of people at work, and maybe let's not just limit it to people who are employed by your same employer. Maybe we could go even broader than that. But there are a lot of people who can offer you, to whom, let me read what's on the slide, sorry. There are a lot of people to whom you can offer support, that's where I want to focus first, and who would be happy to reciprocate. And I know I said it in the beginning of class, but there is something important here that bracket is symbolizing, which is similar to trust. You often have to extend trust before you can expect it to come back to you. And so we have to have the mindset, I'm gonna make an ally by supporting someone before I can expect anything back from them. So we want that reciprocation, and this could be for anything. I want I have a change initiative and I hope that my team supports it, or I hope my other managers are on board, or, I want to do this. Um, I want to keep this program going, even though I hear some buzz that they're going to close it down. I want some people to support me. Okay, how are you going to get that support? And let's see, Gina, I find allies in other departments. Having a resource and developing those relationships mean we come to know we are there for each other. Absolutely. Relationship building leads to trust and collaboration. Absolutely. Thank you for that. So I am now officially asking you this question. I'd like to use the chat, brainstorm some categories. So this probably goes without saying, I'm not looking for names of specific individuals, but just some categories of people at your workplace that could potentially support you. And we're going to flip that and say, what are some categories of people you could extend support to who would probably be happy to reciprocate? So just an example of a category is what Gina already put in the chat, managers in other departments. Okay, so that would be a category. So in any other categories spring to mind for you? Other people at work or kind of like in the orbit of your workplace that you could show support to and who would be willing to reciprocate. Yeah, other sections, units, colleagues, maybe vendors and contractors. Yeah, that's where I was kind of going, LaCandice, like kind of in the orbit. Right. Your clients, Laura, good. Staff, managers, excellent. Thank you, Anne. And I think let's not forget all the support people. The person at the front desk, the person answering the phones, custodians, facilities management, everyone. Basically, that's the snarky answer. Who's not on this list? No one. Everyone's on this list potentially. Right. Do some social networking. Right, says Karen. Ruth, peers in a professional organization. Love how you're thinking outside of your actual workplace. Yeah, Sarah, SHARA, Sacramento Human Resources Association. Any human, right, Laura, exactly. So I have in our last couple of minutes here, how to build and keep alliances. I just have two little tips on this. First, be supportive. I know this is kind of a theme. Start by offering your support to others when you see that they need it. And so the more openness, support, positivity you offer, the more likely they will lend you theirs. What I have been struck by in my life, both personal and professional, is something that seems so small to me. Remembering someone's birthday. Remembering that someone's 5-year-old is starting kindergarten today, or started yesterday, and asking them the day after the first day, how did it go? Remembering that someone has a parent who's been ill and asking about them. These little things, little, if you want to say acts of kindness, thoughtful things, make such a big impression on people. And you notice that none of my examples were actually directly work related. I'm sure we could come up with some work examples. Sending someone an article that relates to a project they're working on. There's a work example. But sometimes I feel like it's the humanity side of our work relationships that really help this topic that we're talking about right now, build alliances. Yeah, be open, honest, reliable, make those human connections. Exactly. And then this is my last bit. We have to beware to not ask for too much. So it's important to be realistic about what you kind of support you expect in return. Other people have their own roles, lives, whatever to manage. And those things, like keeping their job, is a higher priority than maybe helping you on some project you're working on. So don't expect too much of people. So it like this would be something where we're kind of out of kilter. Well, I for the past 2 weeks, I liked everything that they put on LinkedIn, and I can't believe that they won't stand up to the director shoulder to shoulder with me on the, and it's like, whoa, 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 those aren't not really like kind exchanges, so just be realistic about the support that you're going to get in return. All right, we're at the end of our time. It's exactly 11:30. Yes. Our full day session on this topic is on June 7th. Angelique, our producer, is going to put the registration link in the chat if you're interested in attending. I would love to see you there. Thanks so much for spending 30 minutes with me on this Friday morning. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Allison, for that helpful presentation, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. Please be sure to check our website at cpshr.us for the slide deck and the recording. We hope you have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend as well.